Right. Hi, everyone. A very good evening and welcome to the second session of this A-level commerce seminar organized by Nanaska. So when it comes to the game plan for this seminar, we have 10 hours and we agreed on a plan where the first 5 hours have been allocated for the 3 critical areas that we are going to discuss. And the last 5 hours will be allocated to the model paper discussion conducted by Mr. Chaminda. So when it comes to these 3 critical areas, we have the Colombo Stock Exchange that we completed during the first session. And then we have the foreign trade or global trade or international trade that we started already, but we need to finish it off. And finally, we have financial management. So for the benefit of who were not there during the last class, what I'm going to do is I will do a quick recap on things that we have done during the last class in terms of the foreign trade, and then we can move on with the rest of the foreign trade areas. Let me share my screen. All right, I believe that you can see my screen. So when it comes to foreign trade, what do we mean by foreign trade? The foreign trade means the exchange of capital, goods, and services across different countries, irrespective of the geographical borders, international borders, or other challenges. So it can be a situation where Sri Lanka is importing motor vehicles from Japan, or it can be a situation where Sri Lanka is importing chocolates from Switzerland, or it can be a situation where Sri Lanka is exporting finest tea in the world to Russia. In that situation, what happens is 2 countries or more than 2 countries are involving in a trade to exchange goods and services or capital irrespective of the international borders. So I told you before 1977, we had a closed economy where we were quite self-sufficient. Because of that, we did not involve in any international trade. We didn't exchange any goods and services between rest of the countries. Rather, we manufactured whatever we want within the country. But after 1977, we opened our economy to the rest of the world. And because of that, we were able to consume goods and services that we can't produce within the country. That is why we can consume things such as motor vehicles, or things such as maybe a watch, a quiet expensive luxury wristwatch. When it comes to a Patek Philippe watch, when it comes to a Rolex, we can't produce something like that within the Sri Lankan borders. We have to import, and we were able to do it because of the open economy policies that were adopted in the 1977. And after that, we discussed what are the different bases behind the foreign trade, why the foreign trade happens instead of being self-sufficient. The first reason we discussed was the inequality distribution of natural resources. When it comes to natural resources, country to country, there are differences in terms of the natural resources countries have. When it comes to Sri Lanka, in our hill country, the climate is quite favorable for a product like tea. That is why we are producing world's finest tea. Likewise, in Brazil, the climate is quite good for the coffee bean cultivation. And that is why the world's finest coffee is coming from Brazil. And a lot of crude oil reserves can be found in Middle East area. And that is why the Saudi Arabia is one of the leading crude oil producers in the world. And what they are doing is they export crude oil to different countries, and as a result they make a huge money out of it. And when it comes to countries like us, we don't have crude oil, and we are always depending on the foreign crude oil that is being imported. and until that we can't run our vehicles or any other machinery. And it can be the relative cost advantage that makes the foreign trade happen. Country to country, the cost that you have to incur for the production is different. For example, when it comes to the garment industry, the labor cost is quite cheaper in countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh. And that is why most of the global brands are being produced in Sri Lanka. When it comes to Calvin Klein, when it comes to Mark and Spencer, Gap, then Nike, all these brands are located in different countries. The mother countries may be US, maybe UK, something like that. But the production happens in Sri Lanka in factories like MS or Brandex. When it comes to Apple products, the Apple design is occurred at California, at the Silicon Valley, at the head office. But then again, when it comes to the production, making the Apple devices is occurring at the Foxconn factory in China. Why? Because you can do the production at a lesser cost in China than you would do in California. So in order to get the relative cost advantage, the foreign trade occurs. Then this example was discussed. This is an extreme version of a relative cost advantage. We can see when it comes to the Nike Fly Night collection, the different parts of the shoe is produced at different parts. When it comes to the seamless knitting is happening at Germany, then the upper part is happening at Sri Lanka by MAS, then the Vietnam is involved. Likewise, different countries are involved for such a simple product like a shoe. Why? Because you need to get that cost advantage. Then we discuss another reason behind the foreign trade is legal monopoly and technology. Some countries do keep the legal monopoly with the patents and copyrights, and at the same time, they have technologies which doesn't possessed by others. When it comes to the automobile industry, the most of the patents and most of the technologies are possessed by countries like Germany and Japan, because they are the experts in manufacturing vehicles. So they have that advantage, and as a result, they have become exporters of automobile to the entire world, And the goods promotion. There are some goods that we can see readily available in different countries, but still some countries do way better than others because their promotions are really good. They are marketing themselves in the best way possible. Sorry for that. So what are those kinds of goods? When it comes to casino, when it comes to a casino club, you can find it in many countries. That's not a problem. But when it comes to real casino, it is known as you need to go to Las Vegas in US, because they have reached to that level. They have gained that entire brand name around the world, saying that if you want to play real casino, you want to come to Las Vegas. And when it comes to chocolate, even in Sri Lanka, we can find the local producers like Candos. But if you want to eat a real chocolate, or if you want to gift a proper chocolate to someone with that premium price, you would go for Swiss chocolates. So Switzerland has gained that brand name to their chocolates with the promotions they have done. This is another reason why foreign trade occurs. And finally, we discuss the trade barriers being minimized. There can be different kinds of trade barriers that avoids the free trade occurs in between different countries. So in terms of trade barriers, there are different types, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming slide. So this is another way that foreign trade occurs across the globe due to having less trade barriers. Are we clear so far? Any questions? Yes, you can say no, all clear, or you can ask any question. How about others? Okay, all good. Moving on, then we are coming to discuss the importance of foreign trade. So I told you before 1977, Sri Lanka faced and closed economy where we were self-sufficient. We didn't import anything. We didn't export anything. We were relying on the goods and services that we can produce within our territories. So why do this foreign trade occurs between different countries? First, ability to export the surplus of production. So whatever you are good at, you can send it to the rest of the world and earn an income out of it. When it comes to Sri Lanka, we are quite good in tea, producing tea. So whatever the surplus we have after satisfying the local demand can be exported to the rest of the world. And it is similar for the motor vehicles in Japan. They are good at making or manufacturing motor vehicles. So they can satisfy the local demand, and whatever the surplus is can be exported to the rest of the world. And ability to import products that cannot be manufactured locally. As I mentioned earlier, right now we don't have any manufacturing plant within the Sri Lankan region that manufactures a motor vehicle from the scratch. Yes, there are some assembling point where we import different parts of the vehicle, bring the chassis and assemble the parts into the chassis and come up with the final motor vehicle. But we don't have any factory that manufactures a car from the scratch. Because of that, we have to import. Otherwise, we don't have any kind of motor vehicle in the Sri Lanka. Then ability to earn foreign exchange. When we export tea, we can earn foreign exchange. Ability to obtain economic gains. So this is actually a good situation for any country. Whatever you are good at, do it at the best level, be the specialist in that area and get that brand name around the globe so that you can export that product to any country you want, and finally reach to an high and economic growth with the export you do. When it comes to things such as tea, tea actually is a simple product. Okay, in terms of the value of the tea is not that great, but if you look at the Switzerland, the wristwatches, luxury wristwatches, they were used to be family businesses, small businesses in the country some years ago, and they were just making fancy wristwatches for the local demand. But somehow they were able to gain that brand name across the globe, and as a result, everyone started to demand Swiss wristwatches in terms of different brands. It can be Patek Philippe, it can be a Rolex, it can be any brand that you name it. People even would be paying millions of dollars for a simple wristwatch. I can't say it's a simple wristwatch, but because there are so many technologies including in that, and also there are different kinds of threats and opportunities as well when it comes to all these smart watches from Apple and Samsung. It is making a quite significant threat to the traditional chronicle watches, wrist watches, but then again, they have gained that advantage throughout the world. Because of that, they can reach to that economic gain. After this slide, I will show a quick video on the Swiss watch industry. International trade relations and international cooperation being enhanced. When you do the foreign trade with the rest of the world, your relationship with countries will be stronger, will be tightened to each other. And also, you can gain other political advantages as well as a result. New technological and management skills being upgraded. Whatever the skills and the technologies that are being realized in different countries can be imported down to your local country as well as a result of the foreign trade, becoming a support for economic development. If you are a developing country with the foreign trade, you can uplift yourself. When it comes to a country like us, the garment industry is a significant industry in the economy. When it comes to countries like Maldives, even us, tourism is a significant industry for us, not during the past recent years due to COVID-19, but before that, our main income source, our main income generator was the tourism industry in terms of the economy. So all these things happen due to the foreign trade, and this is the good side of it. But there are some downsides as well, like a coin has its two sides. Because of the foreign trade, even the bad things that happen in the world will reach to your local territories. Look at the COVID-19 pandemic. So the outbreak occurred in China, but somehow, since people are traveling, since the transactions happen between different countries, it got spread to all over the world. And when it comes to illegal drugs, when it comes to human trafficking, when it comes to different other whatever illegal matters that occur in different countries would come to your territory. Even when it comes to us, we are an island. We are separated from the rest of the country. Still, all of these unethical, illegal things are reaching to our borders because of the foreign trade, because our airport is open, our ports are open, and whenever such thing happens, those people can come to our country and spread it all over. So there are some downsides of the foreign trade as well. Like a coin has its two sides. There are good sides, there are good things, there are some negative things as well. Let me show you a quick video on the Swiss wristwatch industry and how they have gained a quite significant economic growth due to the foreign trade, because they have used the wristwatches as a home-based business. They have started some sort of home-based small businesses, and now these brands are becoming quite significant and leaders in the world because they have reached to that brand name. Let me show you that quick video.
The Swiss watch industry dates back around 400 years, started not by artisans, but by farmers who were cut off during the snowy winter months. These days, it's the third largest industry in Switzerland, behind chemicals and machinery. The industry supports 55,000 employees, produces 26 million timepieces a year, of which 95% are exported around the world.
I would say that the watch industry is very important for Switzerland because it corresponds to the value of Switzerland: precision, quality of manufacturing, and is a kind of ambassador for Switzerland. It is also an industry which creates a lot of emotions, dreams. So I would say that Switzerland is proud of its watch industry.
The pride of the nation is on show in January each year at the SIHH trade show, where many of the famous names in Swiss watches are sold to distributors and retailers. But the way watches are being sold by the watch houses is changing.
Historically, it was a B2B business. They were selling at watch fairs through distributors in the different markets. But the information on the customer was really lacking. You didn't know the sell-through, you didn't know what any feedback from the market, what did the customer prefer. And having monobrand stores allows you to get the market data quicker and to get direct access to your customer.
High-end brands are pulling away from trade shows to focus on their own physical outlets. Audemars Piguet are creating houses to complement their store network to help build that personal relationship. Online is an increasing part of the process too.
In every purchase, digital is taking over, and there's a lot of influence before, during and after the purchase. But our latest Swiss watch survey has shown that still 70% of the watches are foreseen to be bought in a brick and mortar store, because you want to feel and you want to see how the watch suits on your wrist.
High-end luxury watches are an important sector to the Swiss watch market. It may only make up 20% of the volume, but makes up 90% of the turnover. That's attracting fakes and the black market, so the industry promotes its Swiss-made credentials.
The Swiss is a kind of guarantee of the quality of the watch. The name Swiss is a warranty sign, if I may say.
It's not been plain sailing for the industry. The 1970s saw cheap quartz watches flooding the market. 2/3 of Switzerland's watchmakers lost their jobs. The financial crash of 2008 also affected the market.
The Swiss market has been able to react. The launch of the Swatch plastic watch was one of the big answers. And then as well, the craftsmanship of the mechanical watches in the Swiss watch industry. One thought that the smartwatches was really in the next big threat, but now we see that it's a different type of watch. It's more used for sports and outdoor activities.
So a resilient industry, there's 7% growth in 2018, and that growth is set to continue.
The growth is now driven by Asia, definitely Hong Kong, China, new markets, Indonesia to Philippines to Vietnam, also to South America. There is potential for the Swiss watch industry to still develop.
Hi, I'm James.
As you can see, when it comes to an industry which is well known for the whole world, you can earn a lot of money, you can bring a lot of exchange rates to the country, and also it creates so many job opportunities. So when the world economic crisis hits, and when there are different threats coming on board, like the video mentioned, when it comes to the forged watches as well as the smart watches, you need to find different ways how you can compete. All right, then moving on, we are going to discuss free trade. So far, we have been discussing the foreign trade. The foreign trade is the trade happens between different countries around the world, irrespective of the geographical borders. So when the free trade occurs, that means the foreign trade is happening without any problem at all. The transactions between countries are occurring without any barrier, without any interference. You can freely import and export goods between different countries without a problem, because there are some problems. As you are already aware, there are tariffs, there are non-tariffs, barriers. So in terms of the free trade, you don't find those barriers. Everything happens freely. And what are the disadvantages and advantages due to free trade? First, we look into pros or the advantages. Increase economic growth, like how we are experiencing by exporting tea, or by how we are having a strong tourism industry before the COVID-19 pandemic. It would create an economic growth to your country. Lower government spending. If you want to restrict the trade, the foreign trade, government has to spend on it in different ways. But if you just let the free trade happens without any interference, your expenditure will be saved. The government expenditure will be saved. Technology transfer. Whatever the technologies that would occur in different countries, you can quickly get on board to your country as well when you let the free trade happens. In terms of the disadvantages or cons, increased job outsourcing. When it comes to the global players, global companies, when they come to the Sri Lankan territories or the domestic territories, they will bring their own employees as well. And as a result, what will happen is you will lose the job opportunities for the domestic citizens, the Sri Lankan citizens. For example, when it comes to constructing highways in Sri Lanka, you may have seen there are a lot of Chinese workers, Chinese construction workers who are working in highways or different buildings. What we have to understand is if they would have not come here, those jobs would have been captured by the Sri Lankans. So the Sri Lankans opportunities has been seized by the foreigners. And that is why when it comes to the last president of United States, when it comes to his agenda for the country, he said that he is going to kick out all the immigrants because in terms of the IT industry, the US IT industry is a lot captured by the Indians. Indians are residing in US and they are dominating the IT industry in US. And because of that, the last president said in his agenda, look here, I'm going to kick out. That's what he directly said. And he was like, I'm going to kick out all the immigrants and giving that opportunities to the American citizens to make the America great again. So likewise, when it comes to free trade occurs, sometimes the domestic citizens might lose job opportunities for the international players and poor working conditions. When you want to exploit the developing countries to achieve that cost advantage, relative cost advantage, we can witness poor working conditions. Luckily, not much in Sri Lanka, but when it comes to Bangladesh, in the garment factory industries, you can find the poor working condition highly in countries like that. When it comes to the underage labor, or else lower salaries, or else the safety and regulations are not adhered in the factories, in the garment factories. And then when it comes to the discriminations to the employees, there are different ways in which the poor working condition can be witnessed in the garment industry in Bangladesh, not in legit garment factories, but there are so many subcontractors who are working in a dodgy way, and because of that you can find the poor working condition in an extreme manner because of the relative cost advantage that the major companies are trying to achieve. Degradation of natural resources. When it comes to the free trade, what you're trying to do is you are trying to get the better out of the natural resource advantage you have, and as a result what will happen is you are exploiting massively the natural resources. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of free trade. But beyond free trade, we can find different tariffs and non-tariff barriers due to several reasons. Government would follow tariffs and non-tariff barriers, maybe to protect the local industries, maybe to protect the infant industries. We call it the industries still in the introduction stage and they are still growing. In order to let them grow more, you are protecting them from the global players. For that, you might follow tariffs and non-tariff barriers. What do we mean by tariffs? For the imports and exports, if the government levies excessive taxes, you call it tariffs. When it comes to the custom duties, when it comes to the import taxes, different types of taxes can be there. But there are other barriers which are not being tariff. What are those other non-tariff barriers? It can be a quota. For a period of time, government says, look here, you can import this much. Let's say for the motor vehicles in Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government announces that for the year, you can import only 100,000 vehicles. So that is the maximum cap you can reach. Beyond the 100,000, you can't import. Below, of course, you can, but beyond 100,000 you can't. The maximum number of cars you can import is 100,000. So quotas will restrict the number of transactions you can do with the rest of the world. Then trade agreements. Sri Lanka can get into different trade agreements. It can be the Indo-Sri Lanka a free trade agreement, or it can be the SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement. Likewise, you can get into different trade agreements. When you are getting into trade agreements, yes, it is good, but the problem is it will only promote the trade between the member countries, and whatever the transactions that would occur between the non-member countries will be interfered because of the trade agreement you have. And that is why the World Trade Organization is not a fan of trade agreements, because the World Trade Organization promotes the international trade, the foreign trade. But when it comes to trade agreements, the trade agreements block the foreign trade to some extent. Why? It will promote the trade only within the member countries, and it will interfere the foreign trade with non-member countries. So this is another way you can execute non-tariff barrier. Or else you can have stringent exchange policies. Either you can devalue your currency, or you can appreciate your currency. In different ways, you can move your exchange rate to make the imports expensive or exports expensive. In that way, you will discourage the foreign trade. Or else you can give subsidies. Subsidies means you are providing some sort of beneficiaries to the local producers in order to compete with the international producers. Maybe you are giving tax reliefs to the local companies. Maybe you are giving some loans at a good rate, or you are giving some grants or different support. Whatever the support you are giving to the local producer will make the local supplier strong, and as a result they can compete with the international players strongly, so that it will interfere the free trade, it will interfere the foreign trade. Or it can be license. When it comes to coming to your country and start operations, or when it comes to doing imports and exports, if the government is asking to follow some stringent procedures to obtain a license, it will discourage the foreign trade. Or it can be even embargoes. Embargoes means you completely ban doing any transactions with a particular country. When it comes to countries like North Korea, then Syria, then Libya, Venezuela, those countries have been completely banned, right, or cornered from the rest of the world, not doing any transactions with them. So they have been cornered from the rest of the world. Because of that, they can't do any transactions with them. So these are the tariffs and non-tariff barriers we can see that will interfere the free trade occurs between countries. And this is a simple example for tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Before 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic was not there in Sri Lanka. Rather, in 2020, before 2020, it was not there in Sri Lanka, and things were quite stable, not that stringent. And because of that, we were able to import motor vehicles from Japan or German or India or US. So we can find brand new vehicles in Sri Lanka without a problem. Those days, Sri Lanka were putting excessive custom duties on vehicles that are being imported to the country. As you can see in the graph given in the left hand side, you can see depending on the engine capacity, depending on the fuel type, there were different values of taxes on import vehicles, right? So that is a tariff barrier. One way government objective can be to limit the number of vehicles are being imported into the country. Another objective can be this is imposed with the intention of making a revenue, because the custom duty is one way government can earn revenue. So by putting taxes like this, we can witness a tariff barrier. But right now, in Sri Lanka, since 2020, we have been unable to import any vehicle to the country because government has said it is not allowed. And even very recently, government indicated even in 2022, we are not letting anyone to bring any vehicles inside the country. So this is a non-tariff barrier. Government has interfered or blocked the trade happens between Sri Lanka and any other country in terms of importing motor vehicles without using a tax. They have said, look here, the government decision is this. Legally, you can't import any vehicle from any country. So this is how we can see the difference between the tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Are we clear so far, or any questions? Yes. Either you can say clear in the chat box, or you can send any questions you have so that we can clear it then and there and move on. Okay, how about others? Right. Thank you for the response. And moving on, the different types of foreign trade occurs between countries. The first two ones are very simple and very known by everyone. Import trade and export trade. In terms of import trade, if you are bringing down any product from any other country, you call it an import trade. In terms of Sri Lanka, when we are bringing down motor vehicles from Japan, it is an import trade. The other way around, the mirror view is the export trade. When you are sending a product to a different country, you call it an export trade. In terms of Sri Lanka, when we are sending tea boxes to Russia, it is an export to us. On the other end, for Russia, it is an import trade. So import and export are having the mirror view. And then when it comes to re-exports, as the name says, before the exports occur, there should have been an import because it says re-exports. So what will happen is you will import a product from a country, and then either you keep it as it is, or you are going to do a change to the product, then you export it back. So are you clear on what I said? Let me give you an example. There is something called Haley's Free Zone. Haley's Free Zone, a warehouse in Sri Lanka owned by Advantage. Advantage is the logistics arm of the Haley's group. So what they are simply doing is, they import products, right? They import products. Let's say a motor vehicle. For simple example, let's say a motor vehicle. So from Japan, you are exporting a motor vehicle to Sri Lanka and it is stored in this warehouse. This is a hypothetical example. This is not how it happens for real. This is just a hypothetical example to explain you. So you are importing a vehicle to the Sri Lanka and it is stored in the free zone warehouse. So when it comes to a motor vehicle, you are not doing anything further to that. And you export it to India again. That you call as re-export. But let's take another example. Let's say you are importing 100 tables from China and it is stored in the Haley's Advantage free zone, 100 tables. Now, within this warehouse, you are going to paint this 100 tables with red color, So it is going to be painted. Now you are doing a change here. And after the paint, you are exporting it back to India. That is also considered as re-exports. So in re-exports, what happened is you are importing something, and to that imported good, either you keep it as it is or you are going to do a change, and after that you export it back to another country is called re-exports. The entry port trade is also something similar, but where it happens is a bit different. Here what will happen is you are importing a good, but you are not sending it away from the port. You are not sending it away from the harbor. You are keeping it in the harbor itself, and from the harbor itself, you are exporting it back. This is what we call as entry port trade. For example, let me tell you, there are some harbors where in Pakistan and India, they are not doing transactions, they are not doing shipments directly with each other due to some political reasons. So what will happen is one of the goods that will occur in this way is cement. So let's say that Pakistan wants to send a ton of cement to India. From Pakistan to India, you want to send a ton of cement through a shipment, but they can't do this transaction straight away directly due to some political reasons. In between of these countries, we can find the Colombo Harbor. So what will happen is Pakistan will send that ton of cement to the Colombo Harbor, and from the Colombo Harbor, you will send that ton of cement to the India port. So the Pakistan and India doesn't do the transaction straight away. It is being considered as the cement is coming from the Colombo Harbor to the Indian Harbor. So this is what we call as entry port trade. This is sort of a re-export situation, but only thing is the goods are not released from the port. The re-export occurs from the port itself. It can be even in the airport as well. So these are the different types of foreign trades that we can experience in the real world. Are we clear on re-exports and entry port? I believe the import and export are pretty simple, but the other two can be a little bit confusing. But I believe I made the explanation really well with the examples. So I get a quick confirmation that you are clear on the re-exports and entry port trade? Yes, others? All right, great. Then we are coming to discuss the business transaction process. When it comes to an import or an export, we are talking about a business transaction. We are paying some amount of good, rather some amount of money, and then get a good or service in return. So there should be a buyer. There should be a buyer and a seller, and the transaction occurs in between. So what is this transaction process in between the buyer and seller? The first person you have is the initiator is the buyer. Buyer needs to decide what he or she needs to buy. Select the product. So the buyer selects the product. And after selecting the product, there can be so many alternative suppliers So the buyer needs to select the supplier, select the seller. So that is the next step. After selecting the seller, out of all the potential sellers, you need to inquire the price. You need to get a quotation from the seller. If you are happy with the quotation, you can go ahead with the payment. If you are not, you need to do the bargaining and negotiation and agree upon a favorable price. So after inquiring the price and agreeing on the value, you need to make the payment. After the payment is being made, you can buy the product as the buyer. So this is basically the business transaction in any transaction that you are experiencing. It doesn't need to be the foreign trade. In any transaction, this is the way forward. And what is the import procedure? When it comes to an import, there also you can find the buyer and the seller. Basically, the importer is the buyer and the exporter is the seller. So the first thing is, when you want to import something, you need to select a foreign supplier who will be your exporter. And after selecting a foreign supplier out of all the potentials, you need to send request a price inquiry. You need to ask for the price, and then you receive the quotation mentioning the breakdown of the cost for each element for the product that you are requesting. Sometimes for some goods, when it comes to imports, you need to acquire a license. In Sri Lankan context, the Export and Import Control Department is the legal entity that gives you these license, import license. So you need to obtain that. And then you need to send the indent. Indent is the purchase order, confirming that you are willing to pay the amount that is mentioned in the quotation. After that, you will make the payment. The goods will be arrived to your port, your harbor, your airport, and you need to release it from the customs, clear it from the customs by providing the necessary documents. So this is the import procedure that occurs in a general transaction. Then how we are doing the foreign trade payments. It's not that you are going to a shop in your country and making the payment with cash. Now the person who receives the payment is in a different country. In that situation, how you are going to do the payment? Letter of credit. Letter of credit, I'm not going to explain here because next slide is fully dedicated for this. Because of that, let's keep it aside at the moment. Electronic payment methods in terms of cards. It can be a MasterCard, it can be a Visa card, it can be an Amex. Whatever the credit card you have, you can use it to make the payment to the foreign supplier. Or you can have internet prepaid cards. That means you are pumping up money to a card with the purpose of using it in a later date for a foreign transaction. So we can have that option as well. Internet prepaid facilities are there. That means account to account transactions by using online banking platforms. That is another way. Or electronic payment entities like PayPal. So PayPal will act as an intermediary between the importer and the exporter, and they will do the transaction on behalf of the two parties and make the necessary arrangements to settle the payment. So these are different ways in which the foreign trade payment can be completed. So I told you the letter of credit, I am talking about it separately. So here it is. The letter of credit, how it will happen is, as the sequence given, first you have the importer. Importer is the buyer. Buyer needs to make the payment. So what will happen is, importer will go to his bank. Importer will go to his bank and ask for a letter of credit. Letter of credit. Letter of credit, as the name says, it is a sort of a loan. It is a sort of a credit given to the importer. What will happen is the importer's bank will send a letter to the exporter's bank confirming importer will pay the money for the good that he is importing. Importer's bank will send a letter to the exporter's bank confirming importer will pay for the goods that he is exporting. So the exporter's bank will inform this to the exporter. Still, importer hasn't made the payment. On behalf of the importer, importer's bank is giving a guarantee that he will make the payment. So importer is giving, let's say 30 days to importer to settle the amount. Let's say the amount is 3 million rupees. Importer's bank is saying that he is going to settle the 3 million rupees without any problem, and importer's bank will inform the importer, you need to settle us 3 million within 1 month. So it is a 1 month credit period. And by having that letter of credit to the exporter, exporter gets the confidence that importer will make the payment. Because of that, in return, he will send the invoice for this transaction. So invoice will include the price of the good, the details and the descriptions of the goods and other details and so on. And also, it will include, rather, he will send the country of origin letter as well. So the country of origin is a letter released from the government officials in exporter's country confirming that this good has been produced in the exporter's country. Let's say the importer is in Sri Lanka and the exporter is in Germany. So the country of origin letter will confirm this good has been manufactured in Germany by the government official. So that letter will come in return. Apart from that, the bill of lading will be there. The bill of lading will be the document given by the shipping company or the agents of the shipping company. Once the exporter put the product into the ship, the shipping agent or the shipping company will give the bill of lading confirming that the responsibility of the goods are now with the shipping company since the goods are in the ship. So that is what we call as bill of lading. So after receiving the letter of credit, exporter will send the invoice, the country of origin, and the bill of lading to the importer. So this is how the letter of credit works. Simply, importer has got a credit period from his bank. But unfortunately, in Sri Lankan context, recently, government made a decision where if any importer wants to open a letter of credit from any commercial bank, they need to first pay the 100% amount to the bank, and then only they can get a letter of credit. They can't take that 30 days or 60 days or 90 days credit period. Why government did that was, right now we all know our exchange rate is massively depreciating. We don't have any foreign currencies in the country, and the Sri Lankan currency is going out of the economy in different ways excessively. In order to stop that, in order to restrict the imports and block the depreciation that happens for our local currency, government made the decision of making sure whenever a letter of credit is requested, you need to pay 100% value to the bank, and then only you can get a letter of credit. And this is being applied for 600 non-essential items such as chocolates, wines, raincoats, carpets, and so on. There are 600 items which are not essential. You need to pay the 100% amount or the value, and then only you can get a letter of credit from the bank. So this will obviously restrict the imports, because if the person have the 100% money, he does not require letter of credit. He is asking for a letter of credit from the importer because he doesn't have that money in the hand right now. That is the simple reason anyone is opening a letter of credit. But if the government is asking, now on, you need to have the 100% amount, that will obviously restrict the imports. So this is the mostly, or rather the frequent way of using to settle the foreign trades. Then we are coming to discuss the latter part, the insurance policies. When it comes to insurance policies, this will, I know that you have a separate chapter in your syllabus, but then again, when it comes to the foreign trade also, insurance matter. Why? Because there can be so many accidents could occur during the transaction. Your goods are being shipped from one country to another. When that movement happens, when that transportation happens, there can be so many accidents in between. In order to have a claim for that, in order to cover those accidents, we can follow any insurance methods. So in terms of insurance principles, we have 6 principles. The first one is insurable interest. Individual must have an insurable interest matter. That means if it is foreign trade, let's say for an importer, in terms of the imported good, by having that good, you need to have an advantage. You need to have an advantage. And by losing that good due to some reason, you need to have a loss as well. This is what we call as insurable interest. That means by having something, you need to have a benefit. By not having something, you need to have a loss. You call it an insurable interest. When you import something, let's say that you are a car importer located in Sri Lanka, by receiving the cars, you can sell it to the final customer and make a margin out of it. And if something occurs in between the transportation, let's say the car carrier ship is caught by a fire and the 100 cars that you have ordered will be damaged. In that case, what will happen? You will have to face for a loss. So you have an insurable interest. Then utmost good faith. Both parties should act in good faith. You need to disclose all the necessary information when it comes to entering into a transaction as well as to an insurance. So when it comes to importing goods, especially through sea, there are different types of cargoes: liquid cargoes, dangerous cargoes, highly flammable cargoes, or no problem at all, some simple cargoes. When it comes to highly flammable cargoes, when it comes to highly dangerous cargoes, you need to store them in a safer manner. You need to give some extra attention to those. But let's say when you put those highly dangerous cargoes to the container and then you don't inform the ship agents that these cargoes are highly dangerous, you haven't acted in good faith. And some are saying that when it comes to the Express Pearl ship fire occurred sometimes back, very recently, near to the Sri Lankan Sea. The fire started from the highly flammable container boxes, which were not placed in the best place, because normally the point is the dangerous cargo need to be placed in the corner of the ship, not in the middle. Why? Because if something goes wrong, you need to push that dangerous cargoes to the sea as soon as possible before spreading the fire or whatever the accident to the rest of the areas in the ship. But if you place the dangerous cargo right in middle, it will take time for you to do that process and the whole ship can be gutted by the fire, like how the Express Pearl faced. And some are saying even that fire, the reason behind is the highly dangerous cargo were the highly dangerous cargo were placed right in middle of the ship, and because of that the fire was spreaded to the rest of the area. So you need to act in good faith by disclosing all the relevant information that you are aware. Then indemnity. Insurance is done only for the coverage of the loss. When you are valuing your cargo, you need to do a correct valuation. You should not get into an insurance with the purpose of making a profit. If something happens, if something goes wrong, if an accident occurs, you need to just cover your losses, but you should not make any profit out of it. Then subrogation. One party stand in for another. That means when it comes to an insurance, whoever who has been affected need to be compensated. When it comes to that Express Pearl incident, the fire occurred fire started when they left the Middle East harbor, and it was just slightly in the Indian harbor as well, but somehow finally the ship got shrinked in the Sri Lankan Ocean, and because of that our sea got negatively affected. Even the animals in the sea got negatively affected, and because of that Sri Lanka became a part of that incident. And due to that, Sri Lanka was entitled to get a claim from the insurance company, and this is what we call as one party stand for another, or subrogation. So whoever who is getting involved to the insurance matter need to be compensated as per the loss they have experienced. Then contribution. More than one insurance policy for the same subject. Let's say when it comes to the insurance of a ship, let's assume that you are bringing 10 million worth of containers, 10 million worth of containers from 3 exporters, and one exporter has put 5 million worth containers, another exporter has put 3 million worth of containers, and the other one has put 2 million worth of containers. So you can see insurance has a contribution from 3 different parties, or rather you can have 3 different insurance policies for the 10 million worth cargoes in the ship. One insurance policy for the 5 million, another insurance policy for the 3 million, and the other insurance policy for the 2 million. And finally, the 10 million worth of cargo has been insured by 3 policies, and this is what we call the contribution principle. Proximity reason. When the loss is the result of 2 or more causes. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say the ship is meeting with an accident with an iceberg. Let's say the ship is clashed with an iceberg, and as a result the ship is starting a fire is starting in the ship, and the insurance company is investigating what has been the reason behind this accident. The insurance policy has been taken for any fire accidents, but it has not taken any insurance for the iceberg accidents. So after the investigation, they find that the main reason behind the accident is the iceberg, not the fire. Let's say the ship has been shrinked, but the fire has also been gutted later on. So we can understand from the investigation, the main reason behind the shrinkage is the iceberg accident, not the fire. But in the insurance, only the fire matter is covered, but not the iceberg accidents are not covered. In that case, The proximity reason, the best possible reason behind the accident is not covered in the insurance, so that you can't take the insurance claim from the insured party. So these are the 6 principles for insurance, and this is a good example that we can bring in terms of the foreign trade and insurance, the Express Pearl disaster. The damage was in between $30 million to $50 million, and there were 2,700 container boxes, and all got affected. And as a result, even the Sri Lankan Sea got negatively affected, and the initial compensation was claimed as 50 million US dollars. And as we discussed earlier, the Sri Lankan Sea got negatively affected due to this fire, and because of that we were able to claim for a compensation. So this is how the insurance and the foreign trade can be discussed together. Any questions? So that is the end of the foreign trade. Any questions so far? Or else, if you are clear on everything, you can say all clear and done and dusted. So can I get a quick confirmation or any questions? How about others? All right. So before starting the financial management area, shall we take a break of, let's say, I don't know whether you have taken your dinner. So let's meet again at 10 o'clock so that we will have half an hour more to work on the financial management. Does that sound good for you? We'll meet again at 10 o'clock. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right, shall we start again? Are you all here? Can I get a quick confirmation? All right. So the next critical area, or the third or the final critical area that we were supposed to discuss, is the financial management, which is something that we should be good at in our personal life. Not because we are supposed to learn it in the business studies syllabus for the advanced level exam. Even for our personal life, this is something we should be good at, because in terms of the money that we earn, we spend, we should be good at that. What is our limit and what should be our boundary? And as we all know, when it comes to buying something, when it comes to getting a service, we need to have money. We need to pay them. For that, we need to have money. And how we are going to make sure that whatever the money have in our hand, we are managing it in a proper way. It doesn't mean that we need to have a high pile of cash with our hand, high pile of cash in our bag. It means whatever the cash we have, whatever the money we have, we are managing it in the most efficient manner. And that is what even we are going to discuss in this area, mainly in terms of companies. Let me share my screen. All right. So in terms of financial management, I was planning to show you this slide before starting the session in the proper manner. Even after the time, I will show you a quick video as well. This chart is showing the world richest people, the first 10 richest people on the planet. The first person is Elon Musk, who owns the SpaceX and the Tesla companies. And his net worth is $198 billion. So he is also a person like us, who has two hands, who has two legs, and he is also having 24 hours per day. But still, he has been able to become the world's richest man in the entire planet. So how he has done it? He is better in financial management than anyone else in the world. That is the main reason. Not because he has more money, it's because whatever the money he has managed it in a way that he is getting more return out of it than anyone else. So this is the financial management is all about. And let me show you a quick video, because I was thinking to show this to you, since you guys are just finishing your schools and coming to the corporate world, coming to the real world. I would say you will find so many obstacles in the life. Right now, your obstacle or your main hurdle can be the advanced level examination, but beyond that, there can be so many challenges in the life. So you need to start working, you need to start working on your higher studies, and the life goes on. When you're doing that, you should be good at in terms of the financial management, irrespective of the stream you are in, because without having a proper management for the finance you have in your hand, it will be pretty difficult for your life. So let me show you a quick guideline how you can manage your finance in your personal life. I believe this can be a good advice for you since you are just about to come into the corporate world.
There's a misconception that to be good with money, you need a lot of it. Not true. What you need to be good with money is everyday management. Whether you're planning for yourself or for your whole family, there are 3 basic steps you can take to make the most of your money. 1. Create a budget. 2. Set savings goals. And 3. Tackle your debts. When put into practice, these steps can have a big impact, not only on your monthly budget, but on your overall financial future. One of the first steps to better money management is to create a budget and stick to it. This might sound simple, but you'd be surprised how few people actually do it. You can think of your budget as your guide to reaching your financial and personal goals. If you have trouble covering all your expenses each month, a budget can help you avoid overspending. That's because your budget can help you see and understand exactly where your money is going and whether or not your spending is in line with your personal goals. The next step is to set savings goals. With your budget in place, building your savings will be that much easier because you'll know how much extra money you have each month to allot to your goals. One of the best savings goals to start with is an emergency fund. Building up an emergency fund to help cover unexpected expenses like a sudden medical bill, major home or car repair, or even a job loss can help you avoid going into debt when life throws you a curveball, which it will. Instead of borrowing money to cover these emergencies, you'll already have the money saved up, and this could end up saving you a lot more money in the long run. Start by building up 3 months' worth of expenses as a goal. Once you've established an emergency fund and are living within your budget, you can then figure out some long-term savings goals. Whether you decide to plan for your retirement, or save for a home improvement, college, or even a well-deserved vacation, you'll be better able to set aside some money and have a timeline for reaching your goals. The third step is to tackle any debts you have. First, as you're working to pay them down, you'll probably want to stop adding to the debts you already have. The less debt you have, the easier it'll be to get out from under it. It could also be helpful to know what your debt is costing you each month. Once you know how much your debt costs, you can create a plan that helps you reduce it and eventually pay it off. The sooner you get started, the more money you can save. It's worth noting that managing your debt and your savings go hand in hand. For instance, if you have a debt with a very high interest rate, it may make sense to focus on paying it down at the same time, or even before you build your entire emergency fund. As you make a plan to tackle your debt, setting target goals can help you stay on track as you actually see and feel the progress you're making. These 3 steps are the basic components of money management, and it's easy to see how they can work together. By keeping a budget, you'll know what you have available to accomplish your savings goals and tackle your debts. Having an emergency fund can help you avoid adding any new debt. And occasionally checking in, reviewing your budget from time to time, can help you set long-term savings goals, like a down payment on a home, as your priorities and circumstances change. Now that you have an understanding of the basics, why not take the next step? Being smarter with your money, learning new tips and techniques, can help you today and down the road.
So as the video mentioned, you need to have a budget for whatever the money you have. Then it will give you a proper direction what you are supposed to spend on and how you are supposed to spend on. And in terms of emergency funds, how you can keep funds separately, because in terms of the situation that we are going through due to the COVID-19 pandemic, most of the people were really affected because they didn't have that emergency fund. Whenever they were losing money, some even lost their jobs, and they found it really difficult to survive in the current context and run their day-to-day life because they didn't have the proper financial management aspect in their life. So as young adults, as who are supposed to go into the corporate world at the age of going to the corporate world, please try to have a proper financial management mechanism in your life. It's not about having a lot of cash, it's about whatever you have, manage it properly. All right, then we'll start that what we are supposed to learn under the financial management syllabus in your subject. So what do we mean by financial management? So far, I haven't given any introduction to this. Rather, I gave you the introduction, but I didn't define what financial management is. So financial management is all the management activities in terms of maximizing the wealth of the owners through obtaining funds from different sources and investing that funds in different opportunities effectively to get a better gain out of it. So ultimate objective of the financial management in companies is shareholder wealth maximization. You need to increase the wealth of the owners. You need to increase the wealth of the owners by managing the finance properly. For that, you need to obtain finances from different sources, and whatever that obtained finances need to be invested in good opportunities with the intention of gaining out of that. So there are some sub-objectives as well, such as profit maximization. When you are handling your finance in the business, you need to make sure the income is greater than the cost that you have to incur so that your profit will be maximized. And maximizing earning per share. In terms of the shareholders, they have invested on the company by acquiring the shares or the stocks of the company. So how much you are returning to share or per share should be higher by managing your finance well, and that is another sub-objective in terms of the capital gain, right? Managing, or rather maximizing earning per share, means giving more capital gains to the shareholders, and that area actually we discussed during the last class with the Colombo Stock Exchange area. Then long-term financial stability. When it comes to long-term financial stability, you need to focus on both short-term as well as the long-term. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say you are in the business of selling laptops. You are in the business of selling laptops. And in the short run, if you start selling a lot of laptops on credit sales, it will show a boom in your financial statements in the short run because your sales figure is high. Despite whether it is credit or cash sale, the sales figure is high. But in the long run, if you are unable to recover that debt from the customers, right, then you will be ended up being in a trouble in the long run because you have a lot of bad debt. You will have a lot of bad debt or irrecoverable debt, and you don't have enough cash in your hand in the long run. So what you have done is you have maximized your short run. You have reached to a better stance in the short run at the expense of long run, which is not good. So when you are improving yourself, when you are managing your finances, you need to make sure that you are good in the short run as well as in the long run. Then liquidity in an optimal level. That means the ability to convert whatever the assets you have to cash, whether easily or not easily. So if it is easy, then we call it highly liquid assets. So you need to keep that liquid asset level in an optimal level so that your shareholder wealth can be maximized. And this is what we call as financial management in organizations. So any management activity that works around to maximize the shareholder wealth in terms of obtaining funds from different sources and investing them in good opportunities to gain a benefit out of it is called financial management. And in terms of financial management, there are two main decisions actually. Today, we are going to discuss the decision part, and the next week, we will be discussing the rest of the things. I think it's not just next week. We will be meeting after a little bit of a break in between due to Christmas and the New Year. But anyway, in coming back to the decisions, there are two main decisions in terms of financial management. First is financing decisions and the other one is investment decision. Even in the definition we discussed, the financial management is shareholder wealth maximization in terms of getting finances from different sources. So that is financing decisions. and that fund need to be invested on different opportunities to gain a benefit out of it, and that is investment decision. And the financing decision and investing decisions can be again divided into long-term and short-term decisions. So we'll look into the financing long-term decisions first. When it comes to financing long-term decisions, we are talking about decisions related to the capital structure and decisions related to the dividends. So the capital structure comprise debt component and the equity component, and when we are giving returns to the shareholders, it will fall under the dividends. First, look into our capital. In terms of capital, we need to look upon obtaining loan capital. So it can be banks, it can be other financial lenders, how we can get debt from these sources. So that is loan capital. Then we have obtaining equity capital. If we are already listed in a stock exchange, by selling shares, we can raise equity. If not, we can list ourselves in the stock exchange to raise equity. How we can list ourselves? We discussed there are three ways during the last class: initial public offering, or a secondary offer, or as an introduction, right? And after that, after raising debt and equity, we need to decide upon our capital structure ratio, the ratio between the equity component and the debt component. Are we going to have more debt over equity, or are we going to have more equity over debt? So these are the decisions under the capital structure in terms of financing long term. And when it comes to decisions related to dividends, we need to decide how much we are going to retain in the business after earning a profit, how much we are going to retain in the business as retained earnings for the future of the business. Because whatever the profit we have earned, we can't just simply throw it away. We need to retain some money for the future of the business. And after that, whatever that we are going to release out of that, how much we are going to pay as dividends to the shareholders. How much we are going to pay as dividends to the shareholders need to be decided. So out of the profit we have earned, how much we are going to keep, how much we are going to release as dividends to the shareholders. So these are the financing long-term decisions. In terms of financing short-term decisions, we have three. First one is decisions related to creditors. Decisions related to creditors. That means we have acquired assets on credit, and when are we going to settle them? We are obliged to pay them back. So when are we going to pay them, and what are the credit policies involved in that? Decisions related to bank overdraft and short-term loans. Overdraft means in current accounts, we have been given the option of writing checks for values that is greater than the amount in the current account. Let's say in the current account, we have 1 million rupees in the current account, but we are being enabled to write checks for 1.5 million, for 2 millions, for 3 millions. That means for short term, the bank has given us loans, overdraft, or it can be other types of short-term loans as well. It can be even a commercial paper. So the decisions related to short-term loans and decisions related to accrued expenses. Again, we are supposed to pay them back, but still we haven't paid for something that we have received. When we are going to pay them, and what is the credit policy? So these are the financing short-term decisions. Then investment long-term decisions. When it comes to investment long-term decisions, now we are talking about investing. Financing part is done. Financing, we had two, mainly short run and long run. We discussed under that. Now we have investments. When it comes to investments, in long term, we need to decide about business modernization. Let's say that we are going to automate our warehouse. Right now, the activities that occur in our warehouse happens manually with the human labor, but we are going to bring out new technology, robotics, and different sort of initiatives, different sort of new technological initiatives to automate the warehouse. So we are completely flipping over our business modernization or replacement. Let's say one of the machines that we are having in the factory is reaching to the end of the useful lifetime period, so that we need to replace it. For that, we need to invest. Or promoting business in terms of campaigns, in terms of branding, you are spending to get a solid brand name in the market. Or business diversification, you are going to start a new product line which you don't have right now, or you are going to enter into a new market. For that, you need to invest. So these are long-term investments. And in terms of short-term investments, give me a second. Yeah, sorry for that. I haven't put the right diagram over there. In terms of the short-term decisions, in terms of investments, we have 4 decisions related to debtors. That means we have sold goods for credit and now we need to recover them back. Or related to trade stocks, the stocks that you have invested on, whether you are going to keep it until you receive dividends, or whenever the share price goes up, are you going to sell it back to get a capital gain, need to be decided. Then related to other short-term investments, maybe you have invested on commercial paper, maybe you have invested on treasury bills, or related to cash management, whatever the cash you have in your hand right now, how you are going to put into different opportunities with the intention of getting a better benefit out of it. So these are the main decisions in terms of financial management. In a nutshell, we have 2 decisions as financing and investment. Both under financing and investments, we need to think about the long-term aspect as well as the long-term aspect. Are we clear so far, or any questions? Any questions? Or can you confirm me that you are clear on what we have discussed so far? Debenture is a debt instrument that is not protected by a security or a collateral. It is a debt instrument. You can issue debentures to raise capital, but the person who is buying it will not be protected by a collateral. And because of that, if you are issuing a debenture, you need to be a solid company and you need to have that brand name in the market, because if you don't have that stance, people will not buy debentures from you. Sorry, I have nothing related to this area. I just got a question on debentures. That is why I explained, if others are wondering why. How about others? And the one who asked about debentures, did I clarify your doubt? All right, so then we can wrap up the session for the day. I just checked the date for the next session. It will be on 28th. So right exactly after 1 week, we will be meeting again on Tuesday. On the Tuesday class, what will happen is I will be taking half of the class. That means I will be with you for 1 hour. And after that, Mr. Chaminda will be taking over for the model paper discussion. And as you have all confirmed, I believe so far everything is under control. And during the next week class, we can complete the rest of the areas coming from the financial management, and then you can start on the model paper. So thank you very much for being with me until the end of the today's session. Hope to see you during the next week class. Good night.